Meeting for August 7th to order. First order of business is the adoption of the agenda. Administration, is there any change to the agenda?
Yes, Your Worship, under 5.1, request for decision on all net municipal solution, but move to another council meeting. Just so there's a few information that came this morning that I didn't have time to look into.
So we'll eliminate 5.1. Council, do you have any changes? Seen any? Councilor Swab?
I'll move to accept the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Debate? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Tonight we have our delegation that will be online, and we're Intelligent Futures, and I believe we're welcoming John and Jeff. Is that correct?
That is correct. You ready? Good evening.
You guys are on.
So this is your delegation, so take it away.
Okay. Can folks see the slide here, sustainability plan?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so nice to see you all, albeit virtually. I've been at that desk before, just very different reality, obviously. So I hope you're all safe and healthy in these crazy times that we find ourselves in. So wanted to provide you with an overview of the process that we've gone through, and obviously the MSP is in front of you for decision this evening. So we'll just walk you through the process and inputs that we've gone through, and then just do an overview of the elements of the plan and what's in there, and then talk about monitoring measurements over time. So obviously the process that we've been involved in, we've had 5 steps that we've gone through, and we're in the final step today. And so we've had the initial review, checking in on what's happened since we last worked in 2016. We obviously had our staff and council workshop, the engagement survey, the refinement from the January 2020 presentation, and then to where we are today. So the plan inputs, 3 major inputs. A review and administration did a good job of capturing what had happened with the 2016 plan. Obviously, we had our 2-day session with a few folks at council, got to also see Mayor Poole's firefighting skills, so that was an added bonus that weekend. And then the community engagement and the inputs from 71 respondents to the online survey. So really what we were trying to do through this process is take the core elements and the changes that we worked through on in 2016 and make sure that this current plan reflects the reality of Blackfalds today. So the elements of the plan, the major components of the MSP remain the same from 2016. And just as the previous slide spoke to, wanted to make sure that we have a current reflection of the reality of Blackfalds and what the priorities are. So we'll start with the vision, and in large part, it stays the same, but in green here, you can see that there's a greater emphasis placed on health and safety and collaboration. And in a lot of ways, I would say that the vision for the long-term direction for Blackfalds is the core element to there is just a little bit more descriptive, and I think is a drop in a theme for the future. So the sustainability pillars, we left those the same. So as folks that were on council in 2016, we modified the sustainability pillars to end up with community life, economy, infrastructure buildings, leadership and engagement, and natural environment. And so those remain the same. And the intention there, of course, is to use across the 5 pillars to understand the community in a broad sense from all the different pillars of what makes up a good community over time. And then it also provides some more specificity on that vision. So it articulates through a description and goals what each one of those pillars is intended to be for the future of the community. So those 2 elements really provide the direction for the long-term future for the community. And there were some modifications on the respective goals to provide a little more clarity on the future, but in large part, those remain the same. And then the critical steps, those are the pieces that most of the attention is brought on, because it really articulates 3-year set of action that move towards that longer term vision. So we ended up with 14 critical steps, and each one of those is given a relationship, sort of a home pillar, sustainability pillar, if you will. But as we talked about in our retreat together, the best actions are the ones that contribute to multiple pillars at the same time. And so the critical steps that are in the plan, there's a mix. There were some that weren't completed from 2016, and then there's a number of new actions that came through the process. So the 14 that are in the plan that's before you, you can see on the slide. The items in pink or magenta, those are the new items that have been added. So when you take a bit of a step back and look at them in total, they really do a nice job, I think, of addressing the breadth of what we talk about in those sustainability pillars, and address a whole bunch of areas of community life. So the indicators have seen some progress since 2016. So in that previous iteration, we wanted to identify things that could measure progress towards the longer term vision of the MSP. And so it was essentially left at that. But this go around, we wanted to really build a framework for indicators. And so the framework that's included in the plan includes the indicator itself, where the data, it can be found, the date range. And this is important because indicators are much more helpful if you can observe a pattern over time to see if things are heading in the right direction or the wrong direction. So if you only have snapshots, so you have something that's 48% this year, you don't know if that's better, worse, heading in the right direction. So we included the range that we could determine how far back we can get that data. And then ownership and accessibility. Now, a large part of those indicators, the sources of the data is the town itself, but something like crime rates, the RCMP would have. So just wanted to make sure that that were identified. And with all of that information, staff is really empowered then to, they have the information need to then start to measure indicators over time. So really what we're trying to do with that is that gives us a sense of how things are going towards that longer term vision and the sustainability pillars that we've described. So the revisions, the three kind of areas of action since the team last saw you in January of 2020, which feels like about a decade ago now for all of us, I'm sure. 2 critical steps came back in the feedback. One to add a focus on seniors housing and one on transit service. And then just some edits to make sure that it's clear and correct, and some feedback that we got on user friendliness. So we made some design edits to the document. Also, hopefully it's as clear and usable for everyone as possible. And then the last piece of the puzzle is the critical step track. So as a companion to the plan itself, we've created a series of tracking sheets. So there are editable PDF documents for each of those 14 critical steps. And what that does is it provides a number of pieces of input that staff needs to monitor what's been happening. So there's a status update, is it complete, is it in progress, identify what's been happening to date, identify the work to come, and then a RACI chart, which refers to identifying who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed. And really the key thing here is it's really all about clarity and understanding what's been going on. So like we talked about in 2016, our intention when we came in to collaborate with folks was not to end up with a plan that has 100 items on the wish list. Council and staff have been graded at providing sort of that critical look at what's most important for the next 3 years. And so this is really just providing a level of clarity and monitoring of that 3-year stretch of activity, so that when you combine these sheets for the 3-year stretch with the monitoring of indicators over time, the intention is that as council moves ahead and reviews and considers what next for the community, there's a lot more information and data to inform the decisions that you go. So in particular, this monitoring and indicators are hopefully a new level of information for reflecting on what's been happening, the progress that's been made from staff and next. So appreciate the time to meet with you all, and Jeff and I are here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up to council for questions or comments. Councilor Hoover.
Thanks. So I was not involved in the last go-round of council, so I don't know what the discussion was, but there was just a handful of things that I saw in here that I'm just wondering where they stem from and whether they're claims that we're actually prepared to make as a council. So looking at the pillars under both economy and infrastructure, there's talk about affordable housing a little bit in there, and especially on the infrastructure, it states building a variety of housing choices. So I'm wondering, I think obviously the town advocates for that, but I just want to make sure that we're not making people believe that we're building these facilities. So I wonder how the wording of that could maybe be changed to not make it seem like we're going to be undertaking it as any of that. I can do these one at a time, or I can just.
Did you want to comment on each one as they come up?
Yeah, sure. So related to that one, the idea that there's going to be, critical step 3, critical step 4 are both targeted specific studies in the area of affordability and housing. My sense would be that would be, if anybody had concerns about that, those 2 critical steps in particular articulate that there's some build to be done to identify that. And so it's a declaration that the town's going to be building affordable housing to grow, but there's a strategic approach to developing affordable housing.
Okay, well, I mean, for me, it's just wording, and I don't know how many people would dig into critical steps in this report per se, that if they see it in a bullet, it might lead to
Sure.
Statement under natural environment about how we're continually reducing our residential or commercial waste. Again, I kind of need to know what that specifically is, because I'm not aware of anything we're doing to reduce waste per se, and I don't want to make claims that we aren't following up on.
So that similar to the previous one in a way, these are intended goals. And so these are articulating sort of the longer term ambitions for the community, and related to that, the environmental stewardship strategy will articulate the how to get there. But similar, it's similar to your previous point. I can see how it's a bit of a framing if someone were to just look at that and sort of take that.
Okay, and then just under the critical step, I just saw something in critical step 3 that I thought maybe belonged in 4. It's talking about financial feasibility and investigating grant opportunities for housing. I mean, I think what the town is, from my perspective, we're really only pursuing the seniors affordable housing at this point. I'm not sure that we've talked about, especially not in the next 3 years, but that's something that if I were analyzing it, I'd look closer at that, whether that belongs under the next category. And then
the item that so the test financial, second last bullet under critical step 3, you're seeing that as being more appropriate for number 4?
That's my opinion. I'm not sure, I'm not aware of any discussion we had for affordable housing feasibility at all, especially not.
Sure, and that would be an element. I think that the intention there is that would be an element that would go into an affordable housing plan. But certainly if it's a PERC piece of activity that we can include in critical step 4.
Okay. And then there's some talk or discussion here about the acquisition of Highway 2A. I'm not sure that even, again, I would question whether that's something that's on our radar in the next 3 years. So again, I don't think, from my perspective, we should be making claims such as that in a report this significant. But clearly you guys are still working on this, so we'll see what comes back, but I noticed that. And then I'll just do one more. There's, in terms of the indicators, under the economy, one of the metrics you're using is new jobs. And There's nothing under the actual process that's measuring that. I'm not sure how we would determine that. So is that an actual metric we're using? New jobs within, are we capable of determining new jobs at this point?
So here. So that would be indicator, could you give me the number of the indicator?
Oh, yeah, backtrack.
So can I comment?
Page 20.
That information can be received when we do our census. The federal
Okay.
census, you can draw that, all kinds of that information from that.
Okay.
So
Well,
that is something that we can get that information, and we have used that in economic development. So that is attainable.
It's the first bullet under your economic indicator, so it's stated number of new jobs, but if you go to the matrix, it's not in the matrix it's in terms of how we're measuring that, so that's for my question. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
And just for clarification, Councilor Hoover, we will be looking at it later tonight to approve or not approve the MSP, so.
Well, those, you don't have to worry about me talking then, that's my question.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments from anyone? Councilor Appel?
Thank you. Yeah, so my comments are similar in line to Councilor Hoover's. While I was here in January and spent significant time looking at the first proof that we received of this document, I appreciate the file we received this week. It absolutely is more user-friendly. I think the layout of it is much easier to follow. However, I do feel that there are still points of this document that I don't know that it truly represents where a community is at this point. So I just, and with all the changes, because there were 2 new pillars added, or sorry, not 2 new pillars, 2 new critical steps added, and items in here that we haven't actually discussed yet as a council, I don't know that I feel comfortable approving this tonight until we've had time to actually go through that and sit and talk about it. But it looks great.
Councilor, Deputy Mayor Finding?
So I had some similar comments. Under the forces against sustainability, one of them says 1 walk-in clinic. And I mentioned it last time this came forward, and I will mention it again. It is misleading. It is a doctor's clinic. It is not a walk-in clinic. They haven't accepted new patients in years now. There's also a comment in here about, under economic pressures, that the GDP is not expected to return to pre-recession levels until 2020. We all know that's not happening. That should probably be taken out. Under all of the goals, I noticed that healthcare is not mentioned once, which is something that was brought up by a couple of council members last time that we looked at this. Even though it was something that was identified as like the #1 thing that needed to be in here. So as far as I'm concerned, it should definitely be listed under the goals. The 3rd bullet point under critical step #1 is not relative to Blackfalds at all. We have no existing healthcare facilities in which to even lobby for. What we should be doing is lobbying for healthcare facilities. And I believe that was my comments for this document at this time. I don't think that it is approval ready. I think there is still work that needs to be done on it.
Any other questions or comments from council? So do you have any feedback from the comments that were made tonight before we move into our formal meeting process?
No, I appreciate the feedback from council. It's the reflection of the local context. It's been a bit of a challenge with COVID and a relatively protracted process. So anything that comes back from the deliberation council, we'll make sure to respond to.
Thank you. Any other questions before we thank Jeff and John? No? Thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate you coming, and we'll be talking again.
Okay, thanks, take care, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.
Thank you, good night. So we have no business arising from the minutes. 6.1, request for decision on the MSP. Director Barnes.
Well, I think your worship and council, you made yourself loud and clear on that. I think there's going to be some revisions here. I don't think it's ready to be approved. Which it looks like to me, administration, I think that we should take this back and probably bring it to the either end of August meeting or the beginning of September. So hopefully get that on. So, what do you guys feel about that?
So I guess my question would be, there have been a number of comments made, and I think the question was whether or not they're valid or not needs to be discussed among council. And we have to have the opportunity to have that discussion.
Yeah.
And go back and forth and maybe look at it again. So I think that administration might have to provide some sort of method for us to really look at it and either provide feedback that council can evaluate based on their own input or some other method of looking at this evaluation. Councillor Powell.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I absolutely agree. I think this needs its own meeting. It's too important of a document just to have in the middle of a standing committee meeting. Thank you.
Do you want to bring it to the next standing committee? Or do you want to bring September standing committee?
I think what I heard was a request to have a special meeting,
Special meeting, okay, sorry.
and I'm not sure whether council is in agreement with that, but I think that could be reflected in a motion that came forward. Do you have a comment?
No.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. Is someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Appel.
Thank you. I move that council refer this back to administration to set up a meeting to discuss.
Special meeting, okay.
So is that refer back to administration to organize a special meeting?
To organize a special meeting with council to discuss.
Is there any debate on that motion or comments, questions? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Opposed? None? That is carried unanimously.
Thank you, your worship, council.
Moving on to the next one, Director DeBresser, and it's the audit services request for decision.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Before you have the audit services request for proposal award. As you're aware, we released the RFP with closing date of July 23rd. It's coming to council as the purchasing policy has to award a 5-year contract with a value over $100,000. Has to have a council motion. The criteria in which we rated the proponents was experience and expertise, experience servicing clients, references, fee structure with clear allocation of costs. The town received 5 submissions from BDO Canada, Miznos Kenny, RSM, Patriots Group, and EKF. The submissions were graded by 3 independent finance staff with the average marks coming forward, and there was a clear indication of the determinant of the fee structure. BDO Canada came in at $25,000 a year plus $3,500 for FCSS review and $3,000 for the LAPP audit. They are a triangle. I can say, yeah, we're surprised that we got so many responses. It was a good process to go through to see where they're at in the market. BDO came through with a very aggressive bid, and in speaking with them, they had some questions before they put their proposal in, and they are enlisting they're building their municipal audit team, so they've been putting on more and more staff to target municipalities, because that's what they have been doing quite that's the word I'm looking for. Anyway, that's their target market at the moment. So Two administration recommendations in front of you that Council approved awarding 5-year contract for audit services to BDO Canada LLP for the total amount of $131,500, which includes $25,000 per year for the financial audit, $3,500 for the FCSS review, and $3,000 for the LPP audit. And the MGA requires a separate motion to appoint auditors for the town of Blackfalds, which is the second motion there. The council appoints BDO Canada LLP as auditors for the town of Blackfalds. And with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Council, do you have any questions or comments? Councilor Taylor?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, have you worked with BDO before?
I have,
You have, okay.
yes, advice.
Oh, good. And the experience was good?
Yeah, very good.
And if we were to find that the services weren't meeting our expectation, it's a 5-year contract, but there's a 1-year,
There's a 90-day
90-day.
notice period, yes.
so we wouldn't be tied into it if we're not.
Correct.
Are there any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Our first motion is to approve 5-year contract audit. And I see Councilor Taylor.
I'll move the council approves awarding a 5-year contract for audit services to BDO Canada LLP for the total amount of $131,500, which includes $25,000 per year for the financial audit, $3,500 for FCSS review, and $3,000 for the LAPP audit.
Questions, debate on the motion? All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Deputy Mayor?
And I will move that council appoint BDO Canada LLP as auditors for the town of Blackfalds.
Debate on the motion? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is also Director DeBresser, and that's community engagement budget.
Excellent, thank you, Worship and Council. Before you, you have both the community engagement presentation as well as the budget timetable. As you're aware, we released this to you guys on July 28th, and based on this conversation, we have made some modifications to the budget timetable and wishing you feedback on public engagement for this year. Two comments that came back was one about the online citizen budget platform that we used in 2019 and 2018, and it looks like 2017. The results from that, in 2017 was the first year that you used the online budget software. We had 643 visitors and a total of 193 responses. Sorry, I didn't write this down. 2018 numbers are not available, but last year in 2019 we used the online budget software again. We had 3,700 visitors with 105 responses. This year, we have attached some survey questions. These survey questions are based on service levels. We didn't want to get too deep on that. Are you happy with the level of service? Would you like to increase funding or to increase services or decrease? And hopefully, those questions will provide some direction to council on the importance of different service levels. We also made some modifications to the budget timeline, and I'll just quickly go through that. We did add a Questico budget training for council. This was October 27th, just before the council meeting. This will be a quick refresher to show you how you access the reports, access the summary as well as the detail within the budget. So for budget engagement as well, instead of having the physical open house, we got together with marketing and communications to kind of brainstorm an online idea. And what we came up with is Budget Week. And Budget Week could run from September 14th to 18th. And what we were thinking was highlighting a particular area of the town every day and posting some information and facts about service levels, what that department does, kind of the ins and outs of what it costs to do street removal, snow removal, look at streets and whatnot. And then providing the platform via social media or our website that they can post questions back to administration and council. We'd go through those questions and then the following week provide a live Q&A answering those questions. And once we wrap up that video, we can post it onto our media outlets. It's just a different way of doing things this year. That's the idea that we came up with marketing and communications, how we're open to suggestions to modify that if council wishes. But that is, like I said, September 14th to 18th, and then end of September we could do the recording, release the information. So I threw a lot at you there, so I'm open for questions for sure.
Thank you, Mayor.
In regards to the citizen budget survey, do we have any proof that incentives actually work? Like, I know administration likes them and likes to tell us that it's a really minuscule amount, but I have heard from a lot of residents that they think that it's a waste of tax dollars. And I haven't noticed any change between ones where we offer one and ones where we don't. Is there any way to show council that they actually work? Can we compare to a survey where we haven't offered one and see whether or not there is some huge spike that I'm unaware of by offering an incentive?
Yeah, great question. I don't have the answer for you. However, incentives in general, in my personal opinion, whether it's related to council, it's one way to draw people in. And it's a utility bill credit, so it's utility supported, not so much tax supported, but definitely offering something is encouraging. Whether people do the survey for that fact is I can't answer.
The reason I ask is it does take away some of the anonymity for people. There are a lot of people that don't necessarily want to input their information, and they do see it as a bit biased for people that do. As well, on the actual survey itself, I'm curious why there's no option to maintain tax levels and have no change of service, and also why there's no option that says decrease tax level and change levels of service. And on the ones that say maybe, I would really like to see a box for people to input why they put that, because last year, another reason why we had a lot of comments about it being biased was the maybe and the yes answers were all kind of lumped together when it was brought forward to council. And a lot of the people who said maybe weren't really in favor. They were on the fence. And I would like to be able to see those comments and know why they are not a yes or a no.
Sure. So yeah, we can make if you choose maybe you can have the mandatory box that you must fill in.
Perfect. I would appreciate it.
Councillor Hoover?
Yeah, I was also just a little less detail about the citizen budget. Just looking at the numbers, particularly 2019, 37, almost 3,800 people visiting and 100 responses. I didn't do it, so I'm trying to understand. Is there information that on the link that people were accessing and then choosing not to do the survey possibly? I'm just trying to understand why so many visitors and so few people actually responded to it. What's the format of this? Is there two pieces of this?
So maybe I'll comment on that, and then while you're collecting your thoughts. You went through the citizen budget 8-minute presentation, did you?
No, I'm just talking about the.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, right.
but did you go through the one that was presented to us in the package?
That was some time ago.
No,
The video.
the video.
Did you watch the video?
Okay, because that shows where people can go in there and they will look at a lot of the stuff. They will have information, and I think they will gain a lot of information from the questions, from moving the indicators back and forth. And for whatever reason, I think that it draws people in to a greater degree than a flat questionnaire. But they might choose, and they obviously did choose not to actually put in their final results based on that. Councillor
I
Beck?
didn't see the video.
Thank you. Just on that, I agree. I feel that the citizen budget is so robust and there's so much information in there and it can be so well utilized. But I also think that it might have possibly overwhelmed people, or they thought, okay, great, there's a survey, and they sat down to do it, and all of a sudden it's like, well, this is definitely taking more than 10 minutes, and they're, they shifted focus, something happened, and they ended up not completing it. So for that reason, I would be in favor of us doing a survey, like an in-house survey. as opposed to the citizen budget this year. My other thought for the survey questions was, could we allow people, instead of having one comment box just at the very end of the question, allow a comment box, an optional one, under each question, so that they could specifically talk about, as Councillor Spendy or Deputy Mayor Spendy was saying, about each service.
Sure.
Like, I believe that this part's going well, but maybe we can increase here.
Councillor Swann?
I just want to thank you for the budget week. I think it's a great idea, as well as the Wessica training, because I really appreciate that as well. I was looking at our survey from last year. We just had 5 questions last year, and they weren't like the slider graphs that we had the year before. I think we had them for 2 years. And this survey to me is almost the same as the slider graphs. And I think people need more detail in what they're answering the questions for, and not as many questions. Because last year we had more people answer the survey in years prior. So I'm just wondering if we could change it a little bit so people understand exactly what they're answering. I mean, we've got a few examples, but maybe there needs to be more. I don't know, because people don't know what the town does unless you work in the town or are really involved in watching council meetings and stuff. They have no idea what we're doing. So I'm just wondering if we could maybe change the questions a little bit and not have it like a slider graph from a couple years prior to last year's budget.
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I certainly agree with the comments that a budgeting process is quite complicated. It can be overwhelming. And I like the citizen budget because people get a chance to see. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, let's cut taxes. Well, it's simple. What services do you want to get rid of? You know, but just cutting taxes, if we cut taxes this year, how does that affect the way we plan and the way we think in our budget process? Because we don't live like paycheck to paycheck. We have short-term plans, long-term plans, and if we underfund, then we have to catch that up somewhere. So somewhere, somebody has to pick that up and take a big hit in taxes. So I think for the most part, I don't know how we show somebody, because I know most people who have ever come on board for council, they're overwhelmed in the first year. The second year, they start getting it a lot more, unless they've done a lot of accounting. It is an overwhelming thing. So what is our goal to reach the public? I believe that one of the goals is that we are open and honest. By having the citizen budget, we're open and honest to the public. People can consume. Now, if everybody in the town says, you know, let's lower our taxes, tell me what you want to remove, because that's really, but know the price that comes with it. Because, understanding how we do planning. All our planning comes from input from the public. They say, for example, right now, what I don't think there's any councillor here have not heard the request for the pool to be covered. Where are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? That isn't within this budget. It's not within our capacity. But if we underfund, it'll be maybe 20 years down the road. How do we get there? How do we have the capacity to do the things that people ask? That's really what it comes down to. Right now, we have the capacity to do what we've planned. But if we underfund, we don't have the capacity to do what we've planned. And there's a consequence to our decision making. We rationally do needs assessments and come up to decisions. So it's important that there's the other side that comes with that, because you could willy-nilly make decisions, but that doesn't mean they're the best decisions for your community or the best decisions for yourself, because you ultimately could be raising taxes by lowering taxes. There is an impact on every decision we make. And, when to buy, when not to buy, for example, there's a lot of decision making that is good, sound decision making. And so kind of maybe giving people a bit of a framework of understanding what our planning process is. Because if we underfund, then you have a deficit. This province has had an enormous deficit ever since Ralph Klein was in, because they didn't keep up on the infrastructure. It's not on the books, it's not in the bank, but it's things that haven't been done, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. And somebody has to pick that up. Ultimately, taxpayers are gonna pick it up. The province typically downloads it onto municipalities. It's got, so there's no magic in the game. If we want things, we need roads done, we wanna have services. It's that portion of understanding. And I think that's what the citizen budget does, is gives people to get a chance to see what the consequences are.
Councillor Olford?
Yeah, I'm liking the citizen budget as well. It gives a very concrete, general example of what happens when you raise or lower your rates in generalized areas. I've noticed that too in this survey. It's hitting the questions on the basic units, basically, of what the town is functioning in. And I'm looking at this, probably why we have a few more than the 5 or 6 that were in previous years. I'm liking the budget week. I do have a question though, because you flipped between live and recorded. Now, I'm not sure how well live would work to have an answer right away, especially with us not being in the accounting department.
Yeah.
So are we going to be collecting questions and then recording them and then?
I'll retract the word live.
I think that's a really great idea, because then we can get some of those specific questions answered
For sure.
that people have and that don't see it in the general sense.
Any other questions or comments? So from my point of view, first of all, I'd like to thank Administration Corporate Services for embracing the opportunity for increased online engagement with the public, to provide them opportunity to ask and receive answers back. I think that a week is a really good time, and I appreciate your efforts in that. With regards to the recommendations in front of us, I'm not in favor of using the pre-budget survey, because the questions do not provide the background information that I feel our citizens deserve. The results of these questions are one-dimensional, and although I appreciate and agree with the suggestions for improving their scope, I don't think that it allows opportunities to compare outcomes. For myself, one of the questions that was brought to us, if Corporate Services is asked to work on the citizen budget, they have a number of hours that they have to provide input and background to all of our budget questions. So by putting that in there, they are actually providing the background necessary for citizens to make a good informed decision about what happens when we increase or decrease. When I looked at the citizen budget from the last time to this time, on the 8-minute video, I was very impressed with the changes that they made and how interactive it becomes for that. So I will not be voting in favor of that part of it. I think it's essential that council provide a tool that will allow citizens the most opportunity to give informed feedback and how they wish council to proceed in the upcoming year. So that's just my 2 minutes. Do you have another comment? Yes.
I did, yes. And while I agree, yeah, the video, the citizen budget does look vastly improved from the last time we used it, which I think is great. However, if no one takes the time, if not no one, but if fewer residents take the time to actually go through and do it, is it worth having something more robust but no one's doing it, or having something where we're actually at least getting some feedback? That's what I was thinking.
Right, and I don't want to get into a debate about that, but that's a fair question. Yeah. So, looking at that right now, we have 3 recommendations in front of us. Does anyone wish to make a motion for the first one? And it can either be the one that's in front of us, or it can be an opposing one. And I would assume that if whichever one it is defeated, then we would make another motion for the one that we would prefer. So right now, we have a recommendation in front of us. Does anybody wish to move that one? And the first one could be as amended if they, with the suggestions that have come forward. There's a budget survey questions as presented and not engage in citizen budget survey. Councillor Pell?
Sure. I would move that council approves the utilization of the in-house budget survey questions as amended and not engage in the citizen budget survey this fall.
Thank you. Did you receive enough feedback from council to bring back, to either look at the changes of the questions or to bring them back with further questions as to what is needed? Or do you need
I don't think so. I'll have to refer to the previous year's questions on councillors' questions there. But definitely, yeah, being new here, I'll have to go back and review the previous years.
Councillor Olford?
Are we exclusively thinking as an either or both? Like the survey or citizen budget?
I think in front of us, we have a survey budget and we would not use the citizen budget. That is the motion that's in front of us right now. Any other questions, Dave? Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I appreciate the comments about the survey. I do appreciate that, but how do you construct a survey when you say it's too complicated to understand? At least in the citizen budget portion of it, people get in there and they can see what their choices are doing. They have the opportunity. It is a bit of a learning tool. Just to have a survey because people will fill out a survey doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get your best results, in my opinion. Like I like the citizen budget, and I like it because it gives people a chance. Now, they might not do anything. They might just go in there and get information. But that's what we're there for, is to provide information. We had a lot of people visit it. So if they visited it, that to me is successful because they're looking at it. A lot of people, we've seen our council chambers like tonight. There's nobody here. There's probably people online. But for years, people don't show up. If they are visiting it, that to me is a success. And I think we should continue that for that reason.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
While I agree that it is a good learning tool, we're spending well over $3,000 on it in order to affect our budget planning. And if we are not getting people filling it out, if we're not getting survey answers, if we have 1,000 people who are looking at the site and only 2 or 3 of them actually give us any information, it's, yes, a learning opportunity for residents, but it doesn't help give us the information that we need from residents in order to plan a budget accordingly. It's like asking somebody, would you like pizza or a burger for dinner? And they walk away from you. You don't know what they want. You can't order dinner. You can't give them what they are asking for because you don't know what they'd like. You've given them options, which is what we're doing with the citizen budget, is giving people options. But if we're not getting an answer or a response from them, it's a moot point. So I personally like the survey. I do think it could use a little bit of improvement. And I think this is a learning opportunity for council as well, to see whether or not an in-house survey, which saves us money, is going to end up giving us more of a response from residents or not.
Councillor Pell?
Thank you. Just to clarify, I don't believe that it's too confusing for people to figure out. I just think that it might be too time consuming and people might start reading it and then determine this is going to take maybe what they consider to be too much time and then get frustrated and leave. So I see the bounce rate. So I see so many people visiting the site, but so few interactions tells me that there was something on there that they did not like, and they specifically did not complete it for a reason. So I see that high, the bounce rate of that, and that that makes me feel that something needs to change, not that people are actually getting the information they needed to.
Councillor Swab?
I really like our in-house survey from last year. It was only 5 questions. It was very well done. And it gave people lots of chances to answer and give feedback. This one I do not like at all. So I'm definitely not in favor of this one.
So, any other further comments or questions? I'll just try to elaborate on what we're saying. Right now, we're looking at the process of either having a citizen budget or a survey. And that's the question that is before us right now. So I'm wondering if council could focus in on that, and then possibly we could bring forward a further question about what the survey will include and talk about, because I think we need to determine whether or not we want to do the citizen budget or a survey. I think that's the question that's before us right now. So I'm hoping that when we vote on that, that will be the question in our mind. And if a councillor wishes to put forward a fourth motion that the survey selected be brought back, then that would be in order as well. Are there any other questions or comments regarding? Okay, so does everybody understand the motion that is before us? All those in favor? Opposed? That is defeated. So having said that, I'm wondering if the council wishes to put forward a motion regarding what process they would prefer to move forward with. Councillor Hoover?
Yeah, I would put forward an amendment that council approve the utilization of in-house budget survey questions as amended and engage in citizen budget survey.
Two processes?
Yes.
Comments or questions on that? I guess my concern on that one would be that as it's put forward, it is expecting our administration to do double duty, and the benefits that we would see from the citizen budget, we would see them, but also having a survey out there. Could you just elaborate as to why?
Well, I mean,
Why do you feel the advantage of
as I'm understanding this, we've got an improved citizen budget. So, I mean, I'd like to see, I do think that people are accessing that for information. Clearly, they're not all completing the survey, but it's engaged 3,700 people. I'm happy to see that number. I don't think that there's any survey that we've ever put out engaged 3,700 people. At the same time, I think we can gain something from a short survey. Perhaps we don't do a long survey. As Councillor Swab said, a 5-question survey last year was somewhat effective. I think we can do both of these, but we don't necessarily have to put a lot of time into an in-house survey, in my opinion. That would be my motivation for this.
Councillor Powell?
Thank you. So it didn't actually engage 3,700 people. 3,700 people just went to the website. They just clicked on the link, so they didn't actually fully engage with it at all. We don't know. I don't know if we have data to say what page number they got to in the survey before they closed out, but I wouldn't necessarily consider that engaged.
Councillor Wilford?
Yeah, I have to agree with Councillor Hoover. We could set the in-house survey of 5 or so questions on a related but alternate path, so that we're not doubling answers, just maybe even dig a little deeper, or something that the citizen budget does cover.
Further comments on that? Could you read back the motion as it reads, please?
The council approve the utilization of an in-house budget survey questions as amended and engage in citizen budget survey.
Councillor Swab?
Is that?
Yes.
My question to you, Councillor Hoover, is why would we want to do an in-house survey budget and then pay for a citizen budget? Why wouldn't we just do a survey or a citizen's budget? Because we're doing now two different types of.
Well, my initial response is I don't believe that we engage that many people in our in-house survey. I'm just looking at these initial numbers. I agree with Councillor Pell that we don't know at what level those people bailed out on this, but you know, for me, in terms of being transparent with our municipality, and probably the most important decision we make to a lot of people in the year, $3,000. We get a lot out of it. Hopefully, if it's improved, we'll get more people to follow through. But for a short, and I'm following up on your comment about a short survey, that's my perspective, not a long in-house survey that we're trying to replicate or duplicate the same information. I think that we can engage different people in different ways.
And then a question for administration. Does constant contact this year, can it calculate the amount of visitors that's coming to the site for the survey since it didn't last year?
So you find that out. I'm not sure what that is.
So I have one question to administration. Do you think that the survey questions would be tied in with a background that you have to do anyway with the citizen budget, and it would not be an onerous? Or do you think it would add a great deal of extra time to? I know the citizen budget, you've already mentioned in your presentation that it will add a number of hours.
Yeah, to that question, I don't think a brief survey would take us that much time. However, the background, getting the numbers updated for the citizen budget is a little bit longer. However, when you go out to try and get budget feedback, I do caution having two avenues of feedback. Somebody may choose one over the other, which is fine, because all feedback's good feedback. But trying to get that engagement, and we'll do everything on social media to try and engage people with whatever tool council decides to go forward with. But I'm just worried of having both means out there to try and get similar information, if that makes sense.
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, we've have a bit of a communication plan, and part of that plan was to engage with videos. Is that something that we could, maybe clarify through the video process, putting it on our Facebook? Look, here's a survey if you want to. There's some simple questions if you'd like to provide input. If you'd like to really delve into understanding the budget and how changes made, here's where you go, and this is what we have. Encouraging people to be, because our goal is to be open and transparent. And, is that something that we can just simply put a video together without a lot of difficulty?
As a promotional video?
For our budgets, yeah, because I think that's our intent, right?
Any other questions or comments? I have difficulty asking administration to do double duty. I also agree that having two surveys could muddy the waters quite considerably. So I'll be voting against this particular motion. Are there any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That is defeated. Councilor Taylor?
I'll make a motion that we, council, engage the citizen budget survey.
Thank you. Debate on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The second one, budget week proposal. Councilor Swab?
I'll move that council approve the budget week proposal as the community engagement online option, and that council does not participate in the community information expo.
Debate on that motion? Go ahead, Councilor Pell.
I just had a question. Is the Community Information Expo still expected at this point to continue?
It's not looking too good right now. It's just that we're reaching out to a lot of the providers from last year. It doesn't look good.
Doesn't work. Perfect.
And in addition, it was conflicting with our council meeting as well.
Yes, correct.
Yes, that part I knew, but I just wanted to, okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or debate on the motion? All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Deputy Mayor Slavin?
I will move the council approve the revised budget planning timeline as presented as Appendix C.
Debate on the motion? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. We don't have any action correspondence this evening. Moving forward to information items. Report to council on the building development permits. Stop me if you have any questions or comments that you want to make in any of these areas. Councilor Pell?
Okay, I was just super excited to see the institutional one for the high school actually be
Actually
drawn
in there.
in July, so that was, I did a little happiness when I saw it, so just wanted to comment because that was super exciting.
At least the numbers are good.
The numbers look really good.
Any other questions, comments? Deputy Mayor?
Just on that one, because it is listed as a grade 9 to 12 public high school, have we had conversations with Wolf Creek about when they are planning to make announcements about that to the public?
They haven't said anything to us yet.
Okay,
Nothing's come forward.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Moving on to 8.2, Protective Services Monthly Report. Questions, comments? 8.3, report to council, provincial funding update. Have we got any further information on that at all, other than what's included?
Which included that $1.2 million is favorable, but the other stuff is up in there. We just haven't gotten anything concrete yet.
Thank you. 8.4. Response from the letter that council forwarded. 8.5. Do you have anything that you wish to add to this, Councillor Alford?
Those are last year's statistics, so this year's going to be very different.
8.6, Municipal Planning Commission minutes for July 28th. .7, Macomb County Regular Council meeting. Is there anything in any of those items that I missed? Seeing the council want to make comments on? If not, could we get a motion to accept as information? Councilor Alford?
I'll move to accept the information items as information.
Me? All in favor? Carried unanimously. No round table this evening. Adoption of the July 28th regular council meeting. Council Scott?
Resolution number 217/20, I never made that resolution. And I don't think anybody made that resolution for $60 for seniors. So I'm just wondering if that can be removed.
I think that we can remove that. So that was 21720.
Yeah.
Any other amendments or changes? Motion to accept as amended. Councilor Swab,
I'll move to accept the minutes as amended.
debate on the motion, all in favor?
No,
Oh, sorry.
wait. If I may, that should actually, you did make that motion, but it should say for adults. It was $60 for adults.
That wasn't my motion either. Mine was the 50 below.
Was it?
Mhm.
Because you did make a motion, so what was your motion?
The last one, 218.
Yeah, I do believe there was only three
Yes.
amendments to that one.
Oh, no, I see, you're right. You're absolutely correct.
So it should be 17, the last one.
So are we okay with that?
We are absolutely good with that.
So any debate on the motion? All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. We have no notices of motion. Go to the council. Do any of councilors wish to bring anything forward?
Just one thing, Red Deer suffered an enormous tragedy in the loss of a doctor that was brutally murdered. And I believe it's council expressing condolence to that family. It's just, what a terrible day for policing, because at the same time there was an armed invasion in Caroline where there was 2 people with guns and somebody was killed in a ditch. When there's so much talk about underfunding police, I wouldn't want to walk in their shoes, to face what they face on a day-to-day basis and some of the things that nobody else ever has to face. And then they have to go home to their family and live a normal life. And I just respect for the workers that work in that environment, and the condolences to the girls and the family that don't have a dad because of that accident.
Thank you. Any other points for good of the council? If not, then I will adjourn the meeting at 8:06.